You might have noticed something strange lately. Foods you've eaten for decades suddenly don't sit the same way. Meals that once felt light now feel heavy. Healthy snacks leave you bloated, stiff, or low on energy, and you can't quite explain why. If you're over 60, this isn't in your head. As we age, our digestion, hydration, and inflammation response quietly change. And that means the body reacts differently to certain everyday foods, especially high fiber and seed-based foods that are often labeled as healthy. The confusing part is this: it's usually not about what you're eating. It's about balance, preparation, and how aging bodies process food now. If you've ever wondered why something that worked at 40 feels off at 60, you're definitely not alone. Have you noticed any foods that don't agree with you the way they used to? Share your experience in the comments. It helps more people than you think. And stay with me, because the most important factor isn't the food itself. It's the part almost everyone overlooks. You might have noticed something subtle changing over the years. Foods you've trusted for decades don't always feel the same anymore. Meals that once energized you now seem to slow you down. Snacks labeled as healthy sometimes leave you feeling bloated, stiff, or unusually tired. And the most frustrating part is that no one really explains why this happens. So many people quietly assume it's just aging and move on. But the truth is, aging isn't a sudden switch. It's a gradual shift. And one of the areas where that shift shows up first is how the body handles food. Digestion becomes a little slower. The gut lining becomes more sensitive. Hydration levels fluctuate more easily. And the way the body responds to inflammation changes in ways that aren't always obvious day to day. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It simply means your body is working under new conditions now, and foods interact with it differently than they did at 40. For many people over 60, this is where confusion begins. You hear that fiber is good, seeds are healthy, plant-based fats are better choices, and all of that information is generally presented without much context. What's rarely discussed is how quantity, balance, preparation, and frequency matter far more as we age. Foods that were once easy to tolerate can feel heavy when digestion slows. Ingredients that once passed unnoticed can suddenly cause discomfort when absorption changes. And inflammation, which the body managed quietly in younger years, can feel louder and more persistent now. This is why so many health concerns don't come from eating the wrong foods, but from eating the same foods in the same way for too long. Routine feels safe, especially with nutrition. If something worked before, we keep doing it. But over time, repeating the same high-fiber snack every day, using the same cooking oils for every meal, or relying on the same packaged health foods can quietly create imbalance. Not because those foods are bad, but because the body thrives on variety and moderation, and that need increases with age. One of the most misunderstood areas here is dietary fat. Over the years, many people were encouraged to switch away from animal fats and toward plant-based oils and seed-based foods. That shift helped many people become more mindful of their diet. But it also created a new issue that's now part of broader public health discussions: imbalance. Certain fats are more common in modern foods than ever before, especially in packaged and convenience products. When the diet leans heavily in one direction for long periods, the body's inflammatory response can slowly change. Inflammation itself isn't something to fear. It's a natural process the body uses to protect and repair itself. But when inflammation becomes constant and low-grade, people may start to notice stiffness in the morning, slower recovery after activity, or a general sense of heaviness that wasn't there before. These changes often feel vague and hard to pin down, which is why they're frequently brushed off as normal aging. In reality, they're signals worth paying attention to, not with panic, but with curiosity. Another major factor that often gets overlooked is food processing. Two foods that look similar on the surface can behave very differently in the body depending on how they're processed. Refining, bleaching, deodorizing, and industrial heating all change how ingredients interact with digestion and metabolism. This is especially relevant for older adults because aging bodies are simply less forgiving of heavily processed ingredients. Reading labels can feel overwhelming, but awareness doesn't mean obsession. It's about noticing patterns over time, how often ultra-processed products show up in your routine, and how you tend to feel afterward. Fiber is another area where more isn't always better. Fiber plays an important role in digestion, but it also behaves differently depending on form and preparation. In younger bodies, high-fiber foods often move smoothly through the digestive system. With age, gut motility slows, hydration levels fluctuate, and chewing efficiency can change. That means the same fiber-rich foods may sit longer in the digestive tract, leading to bloating, pressure, or discomfort if they're eaten in large amounts or without enough fluid. This doesn't mean fiber should be avoided. It means it should be approached with a little more intention. Preparation methods like soaking, grinding, or simply reducing portion size can make a noticeable difference in how comfortable meals feel. Many people discover that spreading fiber intake throughout the day instead of concentrating it in one meal helps them feel lighter and more at ease. These aren't rules. They're observations that help people understand their own bodies better. What's encouraging is that none of this requires extreme changes or rigid diets. Smarter food choices for aging bodies aren't about labeling foods as good or bad. They're about noticing which characteristics tend to be gentler and more supportive over time. Foods that are easier to chew, simpler to digest, and consumed in reasonable amounts often feel better than highly concentrated or heavily processed options. Balance becomes more important than intensity. Variety becomes more helpful than repetition. This shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering. Instead of fearing certain foods or chasing the next nutrition trend, people begin to tune in to how they actually feel after meals. They notice patterns, more energy on some days, more discomfort on others, and slowly adjust without pressure. This approach aligns with how public health conversations around aging are evolving. The focus is moving away from rigid advice and toward awareness, flexibility, and long-term sustainability. Food awareness is a skill, not a rule book. It develops over time through attention and experience. What works for one person may not work for another, and what worked for you 10 years ago may need small adjustments now. That's not failure, it's adaptation. Aging bodies are not broken bodies. They're bodies that deserve a little more listening and a little less judgment. As you think about your own habits, it can be helpful to reflect rather than react. Are there foods you eat every single day without much variation? Are there meals that consistently leave you feeling uncomfortable, even though they're considered healthy? Are there times when smaller portions feel better than larger ones? These questions don't demand immediate answers. They simply open the door to understanding. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many people are quietly navigating the same questions, often without realizing that others are experiencing the same shifts. That's why conversations like this matter. If you've noticed changes in how your body responds to food over the years, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might help someone else feel seen and understood. And if you found this discussion helpful, consider liking or sharing it with someone who's also thinking more carefully about their long-term well-being. There's more to explore when it comes to aging, everyday habits, and how small adjustments can make life feel a little easier. And that's where we'll continue next.